All right, we'll get started. We're at our time frame for 6:30. Make a motion to open the finance meeting for December 7th at 6:30.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I know we've all been getting emails throughout the day for different changes and stuff, so let's see if we have everything in here first. So originally, a communication came in from the auditor, and that's our first item agenda, which is communication from the auditor with regards to free cash, which was $1,776,631 for general fund, sewer $463,682 for a total of $2,240,313. As we all know, in a communication today, we're getting an additional $300,000, so we'll have to deal with that at some point. But that was the original notification to us regarding free cash and then what to do about certifying and dealing with the budget stuff. So that one we can skip over, and or unless you just want to deal with it now and say it's complied with as a communication, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Motion to take up item 1.
Motion to take up item 1. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion that was complied with? Motion that the communication was received and complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so take up the next one. Order that they're hereby be appropriated. Transfer of fiscal year 2016 500 from health insurance to balanced budget. Move from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so we'll take that up.
Did they fix the wording? Councilor McGivern had made some good points about the wording of the orders. Has that been fixed since those?
Well, you can't fix them here. What we have to do is just take them up as is, with the understanding that we're going to discuss everything.
Okay.
And then supposedly for the special meeting, they've been put in proper form.
Okay.
However,
We haven't received the proper form.
that would be received
saying
for the
it's
special
At the
meeting.
City council meeting.
I asked Ryan, and nothing's come in today.
Well, make for a very fun special meeting.
Didn't we get an email though, from Ryan with action items?
Yeah, I think we did. When was that, Jimmy?
I looked quickly in my car right before I got out.
Well, maybe, let's see, I'll look.
So Joe, you are correct in the sense of what we have before us is not in proper form, and really we can't do much with it. But it allows us to bring up the conversation, discuss everything, and then that way we can, if we want, give all these, or however we want to do, leave to withdraw, then go to the special meeting to then take up those orders, understanding what we now have before us. I think that was the intent from the last
So,
meeting.
yeah, as long as they're in the correct form for the special, that's fine.
Right.
Unless they're gonna somehow change those and the mayor and the auditor are gonna sign off on those and make notations, but.
Well, I think the first one, though, was, in essence, taken from health insurance to the budget, which is one that really wasn't objected to as proper form. So with that, that's here.
I think it was, the issue, I believe, on that, Mr. Chairman, is there's a from line, but there's no to line on the order.
Okay. Here
On-
it said,
On the agenda, it says to.
all right, yeah, so
But
that's,
on the
okay.
order, it
Yeah,
doesn't
so,
say to.
yeah, so it won't,
That's the issue there.
right.
And then the other ones,
That $500,000 has already been appropriated. What we're doing is reducing the budget by.
Correct.
That's a whole different word.
Right.
Wording.
Correct.
typically, the wording would be reduce the fiscal year 16 budget
By.
that line item.
Right. Well, hopefully they have it in form now,
I think
but.
what Bellamy's trying to say is that some of the computer system or whatever only allows certain lingo. So the suggestion was to hand type it out or something to get it here, but.
All right, so
I tell my daughters manual override.
with regards to this one, is there any questions? Do you want to open up for conversation? Because remember, just to remind everyone, at 7:30, we have a special meeting, so we're timed.
Right, and I do hear you, but I do have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I understand that the committee, relative to the health insurance, asked questions and got answers, but my question is, if we had budgeted this with $500,000 more in it, and now we had fewer enrollees, how many did we expect when we approved the budget originally, and how many did there actually end up being? Is the question I would like to answer.
All right, make a motion to suspend the rules to allow there's
Second.
people from the public that might have the answers. So that was seconded. All is in favor? All is
Aye.
opposed? So I know the mayor is here, insurance, Dowd Insurance is here, or members are. I know members from the fire department are here, and some department members are here, so we'll open up. Mayor?
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't have hard numbers with me in terms of the number of enrollees, but what I will say is that there's 79 less subscribers today than there were expected to be on July 1st. And so working with our brokers and the Section 19 committee, we put in a place number based on a snapshot in time of how many enrollees we have using health insurance. And so two options, 79 people left, didn't necessarily leave positions or anything, but just left the health insurance plans. So a combination of 79 less subscribers plus some employees migrating from a more expensive plan to a more affordable plan. You put those two together, that costs go down. And there was no intentional over budgeting of that line item by $500,000, but given that we wanted a snapshot in time and project out to June 30th, we want to identify any line items where we potentially would be over budgeted to then bring the deficit down before we take it from somewhere else. This is exactly what we did last year as well. And so 79 less. I don't know what the hard number of enrollees is right now.
And so just those two variables will bring us to the $500,000 when we do the math out?
Yes, because we use before we actually insert we have a placeholder in the budget before I submit it to the council by May 15th, but the Section 19 committees and our brokers finish that negotiation process with the companies before then, so we then put in the most accurate number for health insurance at that very time. And it's subject to change based on, are people going to migrate plans during the year, or are people going to choose to go with a different insurance throughout the year?
I understand the budget process. I'm just interested at some point if you can have those details on the numbers shared with the finance committee. I'd
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
it.
fine.
Thank you.
Now, is there a member from the Section 19 committee here? I know at one point they were, but last email? I know it was a Scott email. Yeah, he was gonna come, but then he said he was all set. Can you go to the mic, Joe, just so? And Joe, just real quickly, because we're under time, what's the Section 19 committee for the people at home and what had happened, and that way they kind of
Section
understand what
19 is a 32B committee of the city of Hoyoke. It's made up of a representative from all unions of the city, negotiate with the city about healthcare insurance. We had a meeting Thursday afternoon with the mayor. Our committee members are okay with the $500,000. The mayor explained to us, along with the auditor and the treasurer, where the money was coming from. Went back in our records, and the city did this last year at this time, December 4th, I believe, last year at this time. So the communications that you received was just a communication inquiring why, and the other part of it was, wasn't realized that the city did this last year.
Okay. All right, any other questions yet, Linda?
If you remember, do you know how much it was last year?
I apologize, I don't have any other
All right,
records with
I
me.
mean,
asked
I
for the-
didn't
I've
necessarily.
asked for the records from what the city paid in healthcare insurance last year, what the employees paid for insurance this year, and we're getting those numbers as we speak. Unfortunately, I don't have them for tonight.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anybody here who does,
What?
who has the number of what it was last year, anybody from City Hall? What the adjustment was compared to the 500,000 this year, last year? It was the same amount last year? Pardon?
You wouldn't think we would remember that.
No.
Wait, go ahead.
Last year at this time, when you transfer the money from the healthcare insurance to the general fund. There was very little discussion on it, and it was just seamless at this point last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? So with regards to the 500,000, which is not in form, on this one, there's not really much we can act on. So I'm assuming on the special meeting, we'll take it up there, or Bellamy?
Did Bellamy submit the language or no?
Did you submit anything?
The form is exactly the same, I just added a footnote to the new one that explains what it's doing. But basically, you're taking $500,000 out of the budget, it's going off into nowhere. That's exactly what we did last year, and I was told how to do it last year by Brian. It's exactly the same form.
So you submitted a new form?
Format, yeah, there's a new one.
Okay, that's all we
What I-
needed.
And what I've done with the new one is added actually, it's the same one. I think I just added the footnote so you'd know exactly what I was doing.
And it says to balance the budget.
All right. So on this one,
Make a motion to reduce it by 500,000, we do that?
I think the,
It's not,
well, it's not to accept, you'd have to, I mean, it really,
been substitutes, I would just give all these leave to withdraw, and we'll act on the ones that they've submitted at the full council.
it's motion to deny.
You can't deny it financially.
But if it's not in proper form, then we're really not amending
Right.
it or denying it. This one is, we're saying that the one that you said you submitted a new one for the special meeting, right? We're gonna act on that one.
Gave you a copy of the same one, but I wrote in the footnote you wanted, so you know what you did. I actually submitted a new one. Form is not incorrect, or the format is not incorrect.
The format on this one doesn't tell us to what it's going to.
It's not going anywhere, it's going off to never,
No, but
because there is no,
it's going to budget reduction.
but that's not an account you can transfer money to. You just take money out of this account, it goes away.
That's the format in the language, the verbiage that Brian would use in the
Told
past.
me to use, and we used that last year. I did exactly the same thing we did last year.
Well, this
But it's
doesn't
not
say
on
to
there.
reduce the
we
budget.
don't have that one.
The system doesn't allow that to happen.
Well, this,
So there's no place to type, to override the system and type things like that in. You can only put an account number and a plus or a
so you hand wrote it in on the other one. Well, that's the one we'll
That's
act
the one
on.
we need.
Right, so that, okay, so there is one.
But I think it's the same one, just
All right, I'll be clear on format.
Who's on first?
We can make a motion to deny because it's not correct. When it gets to the special meeting, you can take the other form, add it to this, in essence, vote on it. It's formality, because technically this is not in proper form. I know from last time what it did say, it's not this, so that's fine. It's a formality, not a big deal. So what we can do is make a motion to deny, not because we don't want the money to come back into the budget, because of the process. So, was that the motion? The motion to deny? All right, and it was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Yeah, it's right here. There you go. All right, the next one up is hereby appropriate from fiscal year 2016, $1,742,000. Make a motion, move from the table. And it's to balance the budget. So, $1,742,705.12 to the budget. Or actually, this is another one that's proper. Jimmy, do you have that folder?
That's right. Well, that's because we pointed them out at the last meeting, they were wrong, they fixed them on the agenda.
Right, that's what Ryan sent us this.
Right. Those are the ones for the special meeting, Todd, I wouldn't get those confused.
No, I got them. I'm gonna keep them separate. But this one here, general fund free cash, 1529. So is,
Well, right, because we had them separate them out between sewer and, general fund. They didn't do that on the other one,
okay,
which was one of Joe's other points.
okay. So this will be another one to deal with, but since it's on the floor, this is the free cash, starts the discussion. Mayor, I know you sent a communication, with regards to a new 300,000 coming in. Do you want to catch us up on that? It came in an email. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent an email communication to all the counselors this afternoon, just updating folks on the situation and updating. So about a week ago, at the last city council meeting, you only had a proposal for $700,000 from stabilization, and so I submitted that along with the requests from free cash plus $700,000 from stabilization would balance our budget and leave about $500,000 in free cash left for us. Since then, and based on feedback from the council at the last meeting, I wanted to provide an additional option. So I also submitted an option that'll be on tonight's special meeting to have both the $700,000 from stabilization option and the $450,000 option from stabilization, and both of those will be discussed and hopefully taken action on at the special meeting after this meeting. Since that, we've gotten communication from the state that our free cash is actually $300,000 higher than we anticipated, which is welcome news, obviously, given the deficit that we're working to close tonight. And so that was the communication with the auditor, with Bellamy, over the last few days. We got official notification of it. I know it was sent to the entire finance team on Friday morning. And so that's the news on that. And so I know tonight, and I've spoken to a couple of you, I'm still recommending the $1.7 million from free cash with the preferential option of still utilizing $700,000 in stabilization, and with the $300,000 addition of free cash by the state. That would leave about $800,000 in free cash between now and June 30th, which I think is ample funds to get us through the rest of the year, to make sure that we fund our obligations in overtime to police and to fire and any other unanticipated expenses, some anticipated in the law department at this time. I think we have a situation where if we need to withdraw from stabilization, we do it now, as to prevent us having to come back in the spring to do it again. This is a similar situation that we've been in the past. The $450,000 stabilization option would leave us with about $550,000 in free cash between now and June 30th, which I think would obviously help us balance the budget tonight, but I think we'd be in tougher financial shape later on in the year. And so I think you have two clear options as you debate the budget balancing tonight. And again, I think the $300,000 addition is welcome news and makes the conversation a little bit easier. But what we do know is that we have expenses that we anticipate with police and fire and the law department. And if we go with any other option lower than $450,000, we just won't meet those obligations.
Just real quick, Bellamy, do you have the correspondence that you did with the state and then their response back for the $300,000?
And I did not get this memo.
We have nothing.
Why do you guys have these documents and we don't? And if you had them on Friday, why don't we have them now?
I delivered this to the city clerk's office this morning, so you would have it. I don't know.
But you know we don't come in until 6:30 at night, so shouldn't these things have been emailed to us? I didn't get your email, Mayor, by the way, also, so. I don't know if you got an email from the mayor, but I didn't get it.
But no, if you have it, can I?
It was
just see it?
the email was not sent from me. It was sent from the city clerk's office, and it was a PDF of a letter. And so again, we deliver it to the city clerk's office, and city clerk, her staff, and your administrative assistant should handle the distribution of documents that we drop off to the proper place.
So you're saying it came from Brenna. I'll look.
Copier. The same way that you get the agendas emailed to you and every other communication from any other department head.
I did not get that either.
Okay, well, I was CC'd on it.
From the clerk's office on the special meeting for Wednesday. That was it. I don't know if anybody else got something else. But.
Well, here's this is from Bellamy. I'm pleased to report that the state has reissued its certification of the city's free cash, increasing the total to $2,536,363. Here's a brief summary of the background. The original certification provided $296,050 less free cash than we had requested. Accordingly, I asked the state for an explanation on the difference. The external auditors were reviewed. The response included that the state had misconstrued some of the data we provided. And then on this one, this is the state coming back December 4th. General fund, $2,072,681. Sewer enterprise, $463,682. So I'll give you guys a minute to review that.
Which one's one up or both of them?
Just the general
general
fund.
fund one.
And this is the original communication that we're taking on.
So we'll just note the difference.
Go ahead, Jimmy, and then Kevin, and Linda.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just ask a couple quick questions to the mayor. Still here?
Yep.
Just so I know what you're talking about. So, you had said that we have 1.7 in free cash, and you'd like to use, you'd like to use 1.7 of free cash, also $700 from the stabilization, plus is it plus 300, or is that the 1.7 including?
So let's say we have 2.5 in free cash now with the 300,000 adjustment. We use 1.7 million of that. That leaves 800,000 in free cash. And then the 1.7 we're using from free cash plus $700,000 from stabilization will allow us to cover the deficit.
Okay, and maybe Bellamy could answer. Is it, I mean, I don't particularly remember them coming back, the state that is, coming back with $300,000, you know, a week later. Is that something, where did they find it from? What accounts?
It wasn't so much from accounts. They had misconstrued, let's say, a schedule that we provided of variances between the general ledger and the tax collector's accounts. Because we had shown in one year there, the account was overstated by 148,000, and another year it was understated because basically something was booked to the wrong year. And in our schedule, the two canceled each other out, so the only difference between the general ledger and the accounts was $1,000. But they didn't look at it that way. They took the absolute value of each amount and added it all up and came with $300,000 and said, okay, we're reducing your your free cash by $300,000 because there's this big variance in the general ledger. So we went back and explained to them that
This is
this
the
is
first
this
one.
and this is that, and they canceled each other out, and they bought the story.
Oh, it's a true story.
Because it's a true story,
Okay.
right. And the auditors provided
gonna
a new schedule showing
make it
how it
sound-
looks differently, and, you know.
All right, and a question for you, and also I went back and forth with the mayor. You know, one of the things I was thinking about, because we're obviously trying to pinch every penny that we can. You know, we certainly, I mean, I'll go on record, I don't want to brown out. I don't want to lay off anyone. I don't want anyone to suffer, but we do have to make some serious choices. And having said that, you know, one of the things that I talked to the mayor through email is, you know, there's each employee in the city hall gets a day off before Thanksgiving and a day off after Thanksgiving, and it's pretty similar to Christmas time, you had said to me today. And so that's close to, you know, close to a week. It's 4 days of extra vacation that we're now paying for that we didn't budget for. And when City Hall closes, the Housing Authority lets their employees go. Now I look at, you know, Brian Beauregard that's sitting there, and the Gas and Electric, to my knowledge, doesn't have a policy when City Hall closes that you guys close, do you? All right, and I think all the other departments, except for I think just the Housing Authority. Now, I'd emailed you today, and I don't think I gave you enough time to respond, but I was just asking for a ballpark figure of how much that additionally cost the city by giving every employee, you know, essentially another week off. All right, it actually, it came from, who did it come from?
Yeah, I would just say it's not a whole week. It's 3 days. It's the day before Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, and Christmas Eve. And so those are the additional 3 days.
Okay.
Because Christmas, the day after Christmas, has never been a day off, and it happens to be, I think, a Saturday this year.
Okay, so 3 days off times roughly how many employees?
You don't calculate it that way. It's the only additional cost to the city would be if there needed to be overtime for the DPW during that time, similar to a snow day. It could be calculated to some extent. In terms of the Housing Authority, that would be the Housing Authority decision. There is no city code or ordinance or order that requires the Housing Authority to follow suit of City Hall when it comes to a holiday closure.
All right, okay. See, I tend to think of it, you should be able to calculate that way, because all those hours that the city or those employees should be working, you know, for instance, if I take the day off, I have to use, you know, paid time off or that sort of thing. And it's, you know, is it fair for one department, the city, and not fair for like Brian over there, the Gas and Electric? and other departments.
Yeah.
And I think you do have to calculate the financial side of it, because it does impact, a lot of things down the road. They don't have to take another day off, or they get an additional day off that they can take whenever they would choose. I'm not sure if it affects their retirement. I'm sure these are micro numbers, but if you have, you say 3 days off times, 400 employees, that adds up.
Yeah, and I would just say it's a management decision by me in terms of the employees here at City Hall and the City Hall Annex, and I'm of the mindset that employees deserve time off for the holidays. I know they've always had time off before me, and get a bit more time off since I took office 4 years ago. I think it's both good for morale. I think it's good for productivity. When you analyze the number of employees who actually take their own days off on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which we turned from a half day into a full day off, folks just weren't coming to work anyway, being forced to use their time off. And yes, there's a cost to that. But again, we're talking about employees who work hard on behalf of the city every single day, and many of which are making less than $40,000 a year. And in the absence of providing cost of living increases and raises, because we haven't been able to move the salary study, I think it's the least I can do as a manager to appreciate my employees, to give them for the first time the day off before Thanksgiving. As it comes to other agencies in the city, that's their decision and their discretion. But when it comes to City Hall and the City Hall Annex, those are the decisions that I make.
Okay, well, I'm just asking you and asking all the department heads to make sure that they're counting every pennies. This is probably, the many years I've been here, this is, I think, one of the toughest years that we've had. I mean, can you remember a tougher year? No. All right, thank you.
Kevin, Linda,
Okay, so, let me grab the microphone so I can-
if I can
Yep.
stop you real quick.
Sure.
On here, because we're getting close to the time, is a request to invite bond counsel in. Did they show up? Okay.
Oh, great.
With that, I'd like to suspend the rules, make a motion to take up item number 6, agenda item number
Second.
6. All's in favor, all opposed?
So moved.
Order that the city and council invite bond counsel and discuss stabilization. That way, when these, because it's already been mentioned, she's here, she can address questions as they flow. Thank you.
And you're, Mrs. McNerney? Oh, great, thank you for this memo. You can just wait one moment. I'm just going to say about 2 minutes worth of remarks real quick, just to frame the discussion, if I may. One is that as we're thinking about amount of free cash and how much we should take from stabilization, I want us to give due consideration to a couple observations. First is that we have not made a principal payment into the stabilization fund since 1999. I'm going to repeat that, 1999, 16 years, we have not made a principal payment in. We, for many, many years, claimed pride in the fact that even though we weren't making principal payments, we prided ourselves on the fact that we weren't using the interest. Well, now we're 4 fiscal years into levy ceiling, which, as you know, was what was used to balance the structural deficit over the last decade. And unfortunately, we went to the max of the levy. That was not a good decision. And when the levy ceiling dropped after the 2008 housing crisis, we're left now with some really difficult decisions. Because free cash, after we couldn't use taxes anymore, we're now have exhausted that, as we see. We're watching our free cash dwindle down to peanuts. And now we're left with a decision on the stabilization fund. So now the next new argument is, well, let's start using the interest on the stabilization fund. Eventually, we're going to get to, see where this is going. Eventually, we're going to get to the principal, and then it'll be gone, and then who knows what portends for us. But the interest, and I thank the Treasurer's Office for providing me with a report on the stabilization fund for this last calendar year, 2015. We're on pace to earn about $540,000 for this calendar year 2015. That's year to date. Of course, as you know, we only have a few weeks left. We have already taken in calendar year 2015 $375,000 of the 540. So, because we had an appropriation back in May for snow. So we're 540 minus 375. So that, let's just call that 170, 165-ish left. So any number north of 165 is a withdrawal over the interest amount, okay? So here we're presented with a number of unsatisfactory alternatives, and we need to make the best of the situation. So, presentation number one from the mayor's office was, let's use 1.7 million in free cash, and let's have 700,000 from the stabilization fund. Okay, that was option one. You'll see that this evening at special meeting. Some of us didn't think that's a great option. Option two was not as, certainly better than that option, but also not a good option, was to take $450,000 from stabilization, and then we would have an amount of about approximately $250,000 in free cash. So that was going to be the options for this evening. So we were going to have $250,000 in free cash, we're going to have a balanced budget, and we were going to take $450,000 from the stabilization fund. What happened between there and our road to the special meeting? This $300,000 came to us. Great. This is welcome news indeed. Everybody's very pleased about this. So the question is, how does this change the calculus for our decisions for this evening? Should we, option one, leave this in free cash, or B, reduce the amount of money that we should take from stabilization? I maintain the obvious answer is we were going to have $250,000 in free cash. The mayor presented that as an option. We should remain with that as the option. We should not increase free cash to $550,000, taking $450,000 out of stabilization fund when we don't have to. We should only take $150,000 out in light of the new $300,000. This is, to me, is the obvious answer. It also is to say, in this calendar year, that would avoid us from taking $375 plus $450, that's $825,000. $300 in approximately $25,000 more than the interest being earned this year. Now, it should be noted that we have made other withdrawals when we had to. It has been 2 years since the last withdrawal. We made a withdrawal of $607,000 back on July 2013. The current fund balance is $11.95 million currently, before we make any changes. So I was going to live with the $400,000 cut as the best of all scenarios, the most that we could make of the situation, leaving some decent amount of free cash, recognizing the rest of this year is going to simply have to be budget transfers, difficult decisions, see if anything else shakes loose over the next 6 months. We're simply not in a position to continue to raid the stabilization. We are now going above and beyond interest. We are going to the principal of the stabilization fund. At what point do we draw a line here? At what point do you need to hear what you need to hear to make the difficult decisions that we as elected officials need to make? It's really quite that simple. You are presented now with one extra variable, $300,000. So the question now is, should we vote to take that still from stabilization and leave it in free cash? The only thing romantically interesting about free cash over stabilization, I suppose, is that it only takes a majority vote of the council to pass free cash transfers, as opposed to it requires a 2/3 vote of the stabilization fund. But the stabilization fund is supposed to be very difficult to take from. That's why the statute left that as the threshold. So I maintain we should preserve our stabilization fund as much as possible. We've heard from Mrs. McNerney in a well-placed memo here as well, which this is all,
On that, Kevin, did everyone get that memo from her?
hopefully,
Everyone?
and hopefully she can expand on that for about 5 minutes or so. You know, all common sense things, everything she says in there makes perfect sense, all what you would expect her to say, which is, council, mayor, address your structural deficit. If you really want to maintain a good rating, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, she can feel free to correct me, but you have to address this structure. If you want to maintain the best rating possible, we need to address our structural deficit, which is about $2 million, and it's been here for quite some time. The fact of the matter is, folks, this is not like, well, this is a bridge to get us to, like, you know, FY17 is going to be easier and better. So if we just take this lump of, at the moment, it'll all be better next year. No, it's getting worse, okay? Because unless we fix some of the real big dollar ticket items, the schedule for the retirement fund alone to be fully funded by 2032 is going to knock us right out of the ballpark alone, okay? That's set to go up $200,000 more in next fiscal year, and after that, it's on a glide path to go up $600,000 a year for every year until 2031, until the last year, okay? So how many Gary Rome projects, how much in, new investment are we going until we're going to address that? And everything else creeps up, no matter how much we do our best. There's cost of living adjustments in the contracts, there's health insurance, all these things. So I'm just going to surmise to say, at this point, we need to go with the most conservative approach. That, to me, is, let's be thankful for this 300 this evening, go with 150 in the stabilization fund, and go with and keep about 250 in the free cash. That was our plan for this evening. I think we should stay with it. Thank you.
Linda? Then Howie and Joe.
I will yield to bond counsel to be able to make comments.
Okay, first Howie?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how much was in the stabilization fund last year when we started the year?
Kevin, you got the sheet?
Well, we had, let's see. I will get back to you with that answer because I have to do a little math.
All right, just the other thing too, I did receive, this information from the mayor's office this afternoon on the answering machine, so it was out there.
Joe?
If I could ask a logistic question to the auditor real quick about the free cash.
Yep.
Bellamy? No, is he gone?
No, he's here, he's here.
Well, the answer, we need the answer through the microphone. Historically, after the state certifies our free cash, in the past, this body has taken a vote to agree to reappropriate that dollars, and I think reappropriation is the incorrect term, but we've taken a vote to accept the dollars. Now, I don't know what we have in front of us other than emails that have come in, because I don't have anything that has been put on the agenda in terms of what the exact number is. But do we have to vote on accepting the free cash, or is it a done deal?
I don't recall your voting to accept it last year.
It's before your time.
Yeah, so no, I don't know, but I don't recall your doing it last year.
You know,
I sent the communication in, and I thought that was it, because it's the state that tells us what it is. It's money it's our money. The state is just certifying that it is available to us to use for this free cash
and
purpose.
do we have the communication from the state in front of us this evening?
Todd does.
Yeah. It's
He
in
has
the
both
new
of them, the
folder.
old one and the new one.
What is
we have
the
both.
amount?
The first communication we received was the general fund was $1,776,631. The new communication from the state says it's $2,072,681.
Thank you. And real quick, Mr. Chairman, because I think I'd rather hear from bond counsel like everyone while we're at the committee level. But just on Kevin's remarks, it's certainly well thought out and a lot of important ideas within our president's thoughts. This evening, though, I think a discussion has to go further, or at least continue what we've had for the last 2 years, is a structural deficit is not corrected by reducing the budget. A structural deficit is corrected by filing the orders to reduce the number of employees we have. Our budget is 100% personnel. The only way we're going to overcome a structural deficit is to reduce service. I, for one, intend to fight for service until the last possible straw. And Kevin, I think you may have pointed out we might be there. But let's be honest. This is not a budget discussion. A structural deficit is we have to reduce. Never mind brownouts. It's a blackout. We have to take something off of line. Never mind police with 88. Our ordinance says 98. We're going down to a lot less. I was in the middle of what happened this weekend downtown with a guy running around with a semi-automatic pistol. And if we're going to tell the people of this city we need to reduce our police coverage, let's do it. But that's how you resolve a structural deficit. Let's talk about trash pickup. Let's have the real discussion, not the budget discussion and the affordability discussion. That sounds great in the headlines. The structural deficit can only be And a budget that's 100% personnel can only be addressed by reduction of personnel. I personally believe that's why we have a stabilization account, is to get us back to the good times, to get us through this, which I think is going to correct itself, maybe not in 2 years, but over the next 5 years, I believe it will correct itself, as long as we don't let government grow, as long as we're careful about spending our dollars. But let's be real honest. We've done this discussion for 2 years now. Not one order of reducing service has been filed by any one of us.
Bellamy, just one question. I filed the order to have department heads come in for shortfalls, and then the mayor sent out a communication saying that you guys had already done that. Do you have a list of what every department head said? or-
Actually, what I did was I asked, he misquoted me. I asked them for, what do you think you're gonna need from free cash? I was doing actually the exact opposite, saying, what do you foresee that you might need? I wanna know what the problem was gonna be.
Do you have that list?
No, I didn't bring it with me, no.
Okay. Do we know hypothetically or rough numbers what it was? or-
Well, I can tell you that it was like $1.4 million, but I didn't believe a lot of the numbers. But that was the total. It was something like $1.4 million, $1.5 million. Wish list items. A lot of them are wish list items.
Like what? Example wish list.
Let's see. Yeah, there was a new truck in the fire department. It was kind of a wish list item. Not a big truck, a little truck.
Overtime?
Oh,
What were the
there
overtime
was
numbers?
lots of overtime. No, there was lots of overtime in there.
All departments or what
No, just
department?
police and fire.
And what were those numbers?
Fire was 200,000, police was 300,000.
So fire was 200,000, police was 300.
There was 288 for police retirements. There was 50,000 for a fire vehicle. There was
Police retirements, how much was that?
288.
288.
I can't. There was 65,000 to clean up something on Mountain Road, I believe. I'm trying to remember these things as I. 100,000 in the law department for either
Outside counsel or?
claims or litigation. I can't remember what. So run that up. Yeah, 15,000 for the clerks for the election. It mounts up pretty quickly.
So 50,000 elections. Okay, thank you. And with that, can we have bond counsel come up to the microphone?
Only to Howie, your question, 12.16 million was the beginning of the,
Is that the beginning of calendar
calendar year 15.
My name is Cinder McNerney, and actually, I'm not an attorney. I'm not the city's bond counsel. I'm the city's financial advisor in connection with its debt issuance, and I give advice not only on debt issuance to the city, but also on how to maintain, improve credit, the city's credit. So, whereas bond counsel would opine on primarily the tax exempt status of bonds and approve bond orders and things like that. I work very closely with bond counsel, but just to clarify, I help the city issue all of its debt. I've been working with the city for over 40 years. And I work at First Southwest Company in Boston at this point, and that's at 54 Canal Street in downtown Boston. And my name is Cinder McNerney.
How much are we paying to spend to be here?
Nothing.
Just for future, do you have a business number, this telephone number?
Yes. 617
Yep,
619 4408. That's a direct line.
thank you. Could you summarize your thoughts in this document for the folks?
Well,
Give us any other thoughts you may have?
Well, I recognize, I mean, the city, like a number of the communities in this area of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has suffered from stagnant growth. And it's hurt the city if state aid, under Prop 2.5, if state aid isn't going to compensate for a lack of growth, and state aid has not exactly compensated for the lack of growth, then communities are put in between a rock and a hard place. You're essentially at your lower levy limit of Prop 2.5, which is the same difference as your primary levy limit, just about. There are ways to get around that, but generally that's not something that you want to do. I mean, you have the option to exclude existing debt service from that primary levy limit cap. I'm sure that's not something that most communities want to do, but it is an option. You're in the middle of the fiscal year, you're trying to set your fiscal 16 tax rate. It's very difficult in the middle of a fiscal year to deal with, in the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year, to close the gap that you're dealing with right now. I mentioned in my email that I think deficit financing is a last resort for most municipalities. It comes with a lot of conditions and controls, and I don't think the city, it would appear to me that you haven't run out of options to balance your budget at all. You live very conservatively. If you look at the last 3 years, you've barely raised your tax levy, you've barely raised your budget. Your state aid's barely gone up. I mean, you're basically living within your means. And so part of my comments had to do with whether or not you can help yourselves in some ways. And it might have to do with, developing new revenue sources. You've got a very healthy looking stabilization fund right now. To draw on it to some extent, from my perspective, or free cash, because I look at free cash and stabilization most of the time the way that analysts or investors or credit rating agencies look at the city's financial statements. They look at your audited financial statements more than they look at the UMass system of accounting, which is free cash. And so they look at unassigned fund balance under generally accepted accounting principles, so they can compare you, with other communities rated like Holyoke, which is in the high A category. And that they would normally take a look at that unassigned fund balance, which is approximately the same as free cash plus stabilization combined together. They look at that as a percent of your revenues. And right now, and for one, your stabilization fund balance alone has maintained itself fairly steady in the last 5 years. Your free cash has gone down some, but your unassigned fund balance is, while it's gone down a little, total fund balance has gone down a little bit last year. Your unassigned is in pretty good shape. It's at right now probably 10% of your general fund revenues at June 30, 14. So you look good through June 30, 14. What's happening June 30, 15, I haven't seen audited results yet. I hear what you're all saying. I heard free cash, the certification number for free cash. I know you're maintained at June 30, 15. Approximately the same amount of stabilization fund as you had in the last 4 or 5 years. So 15 looks like it'll come in. I'm assuming you didn't get hit too hard with snow and ice, because most of that happened in the eastern part of the state last year. So you're dealing with fiscal 16, which it would appear to me you can deal with. It's not going to be good, and it's not going to set you up well for what you're probably going to be dealing with in fiscal 17 and 18, if in fact there's no new growth and you don't get some kind of windfall and you don't raise revenues. I mean, you really are up against it if you don't do a combination of things, probably. I mean, it's up for you all to decide. It's not, and I don't envy that you have to decide it, because I think you've been dealt a hand here with regard to what's happened with assessed values and your primary levy limit, how that works. But in order to, structural balance has been the mantra of the rating agencies and everybody in the last 5 years. I mean, if not longer. And the way the rating agencies will look at you is prospectively. They used to look at historical trends. They're much more interested now in terms of exactly what are you facing, what are you willing to do, are you going to do it, are you going to do it timely? If you want to draw on some stabilization funds, that's not the end of the world. Or free cash. What is really important right now is how does that position you in terms of fiscal 17? Because the sooner you deal with whatever is the problem, whatever is the structural problem that you're facing for next year, I know what you're facing for this year, but the sooner that you deal with whatever your choices are now should position you well for fiscal 17, because fiscal 17 is just going to get compounded. If you don't regenerate free cash and you use it all, you're going to have to go back into stabilization fund and really start to rate it in fiscal 17 unless you regenerate something or add revenues. Maybe you've got the ability to have a combination of cuts and revenues, but you haven't had new growth, so your budget would appear to me that it's approximately the same. Now, I'm not sure of the ins and outs. The city of Holyoke's been out of the bond market for a while, so we haven't done. The last time that you were before the rating agency was September of 2014. So you've got You know, so some of the ins and outs as to how you've been managing, frankly, to live within your means like this is, I don't know the detail, but I'm sure it's been difficult. You know, that's basically what I can say. Deficit financing, though, for one, you don't need that. It's not really going to help you. You've got options, and there's a real stigma associated with using deficit financing. And it would just allow you to spend money that you really don't have. You'd be bonding current expense, and that's, you know, not really what you want to do.
So don't do that.
Don't do that. No, I would not do that. I mean, I've been involved in lots of deficit financing situations, most of the ones that have occurred around this state in the last 40 years. And it's got a purpose, but you don't need that right now. Would be my 2 cents.
Peter, anyone else have questions? Mr. Peter?
Senator, thanks for coming down and really enlightening us about the situation that we're in. The question I had is about I think it was asked by our chairman, does this really affect taking money from there? How does that really affect our rating, or could it affect our rating if you take some money out of the stabilization fund?
Well, it's gonna be a heads up to the rating agency that, oh, they're starting to draw on reserves to some extent. And they're gonna want to, and that means that your budget's getting tighter also if you don't regenerate the free cash. And then the next logical question is, what's happening in fiscal 17? And what are the results for final results for fiscal 15, which is the audit? But we got an approximation of that right now. But what's gonna be the results for fiscal 16? How close to budget? Is there not gonna be any more free cash won't get generated? I mean, right now, your revenues, I don't know how your revenues are coming in relative to your estimates. I don't know if there's a way to cut back on your budget, even if you don't cut the budget, but you just freeze certain spending.
Yeah.
And whether or not you can try to tighten your belt before the end of the fiscal year so that when you go into the budget discussion for fiscal 17, you should actually be looking at fiscal 18 also. You should be definitely planning ahead at this point so that this doesn't snowball and become a cumulative problem. Because if it becomes cumulative, you don't have enough stabilization funds to deal with that. And once something becomes cumulative, which it has in most of the situations that have become deficit financing situations in this state, then you basically have to ask for bonding authority. I mean, right now you don't have deficit financing bonding authority to begin with. It requires special legislation and it requires support from the state. And when they give you support, they put into the language that they're going to control things one way or the other. So it's not, it's really not a great situation to get yourself in that position. But it's generally occurred around the state from mismanagement or from accumulative deficits that weren't discovered and dealt with soon enough. And whether it's from, a lot of the situations occurred from municipal hospitals going out of business around the state. But other ones have occurred from mismanagement. Right now, the city's got, when the city's not mismanaged, the city's managed itself extremely well, considering the financial position you're in right now, as well as that you've been dealing with very little growth for quite a while now, but you're at a crossroads from my perspective. It's very critical. Right now, you're in the middle of a fiscal year with a situation where you got to make a tough choice of drawing on reserves, and it's only going to get worse unless you really do address if you can cut and make efficiencies and or if you can raise revenues in lieu of that, and some kind of ongoing, something that's sustainable. Generally, the city's not only trying to deal with balancing its budget, it's also trying to deal with creating a vision for itself that it can strive to achieve, and that includes economic development and the willingness to encourage outside parties to invest in the city. And if the city's going to just cut its way out of this, it's not as likely that you can, you want to build your flexibility. One of my comments in what I wrote was that, the rating is less important. It is a reflection of your flexibility, but it's more important how the city plans to achieve what it wants to achieve over the next 5 and 10 years. I mean, really, the horizon has to look out to what the city's trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there. And it's probably going to take, if you don't have new growth, trying to figure out what you're willing to stomach in terms of new revenue sources. The rating agency is always looking at the diversity of the revenue stream. Like, if you're reliant on state aid and you're reliant on property taxes, which is what everybody in Massachusetts is pretty much relying on, what else do you have? You know, they in the Municipal Relief Act, not so long ago, they allowed meals and rooms option taxes. And, yeah, so you did that, you helped yourself. You're allowed CPA, you can do that if you want. But you got water, sewer rates that you can go to, and then there's trash fees, and then there's, and then there's, that's pretty much, oh, and there's the local fees too. But, it's a balancing act, and I don't envy all of you, and it takes working together, but it does take taking a look at your multi-year situation, the next couple of years. You mentioned retirement. That's clearly an area where you have to weigh the pros and cons of, the sort of the budgetary relief by extending it versus the additional costs, especially in light of the fact that you've got other post-employment benefits for health that you're going to have to start taking on at some point. I know the plan is let's take it on probably when we finish paying off retirement, and maybe you can't even, once you get into it, we'll discover that it's too much. And so that has to be looked at well in advance so that can also be worked into any kind of, plans for contract negotiations and everything else that's being worked on. So it's a, it's a balancing act as it's up to all of you who've been elected.
Some tough choices ahead of us, and I think you keyed on one thing is you can make some cuts, but you got to have revenue coming in, and we got to look at creative ways to bring into revenue, into the city. It's not always easy, but maybe increasing some fees, or I know we're dealing with the sewer problem. That's a big hit every year, so that's one thing I think that we have to look at is increasing our revenue. Thank you.
All right, with that, because we're at the, thank you very much. With that, the order before us was the $1,742,000 of free cash. And there's another one in the file for 1.5. That's in the special meeting one. So is there a motion for this one?
This isn't the right number.
There's one for 1.5, and then there's the other one is the 400 and something.
Right, this was the breakup. You have to break it out because this was done
Yeah,
wrong.
so we'll give that one denied.
Motion to deny,
Vote on the other two.
Second.
seconded, all those in favor, all those opposed. The next one was, because I took it up, suspending the rules to invite bond counsel in, order that it's complied with.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one is a motion, my list, I'll make sure we're going down the agenda correctly. Order that there hereby be appropriated from free cash, $700,000 from stabilization to balance budget. And this one, once again, wasn't done in proper form, but it will be in the new folder.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Motion is to deny. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Five, motion or order that they invite the city department heads in to show the shortfalls. Motion make it move from the table. All those in favor? All those opposed? Anyone here from the department heads to give that list of shortfalls? I know Bellamy says he doesn't have it. All right, so make a motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The next one's 6, 7, we have to take up, make a motion to remove from the table.
So moved.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion to transfer $3,500 from pay order to professional accounting. And we heard from Bellamy that this is to pay.
Motion to remove from the table.
All those in
Second.
favor? All those opposed?
Make a motion be approved.
Second.
Motion is to approve. All those in favor? All those opposed? What? Hold on.
We're in good company, Jim.
Pass. And the last one, make a motion move from the table, environmental grant. That's the last one. All those in favor, all those opposed, make a motion to, guess it would be to deny. Actually, this one, we didn't get it, so that's a question. Kevin, anyone else?
Give it leave to withdraw.
This one, because I don't want to put it in bad form where they think we're not accepting grants. This one was the one where we thought we were getting a grant. Bill put the paperwork in because we were supposed to get it, and then got the notice that we didn't receive it. So kind of the cart before the horse. Since we really didn't receive anything,
Well, the only one that's gonna know about it is us, and that's to establish the fund to put the money in, and since we're not gonna get the money, there's no need to establish the fund.
so just
Accept the
deny it.
We can't accept a grant we didn't receive.
Right, so
I'd just make a motion to deny it.
all right.
Second.
He can always refile it.
Well, just put it on the record, we're not denying grants,
Right.
especially ones that didn't have a city match. It's just that we didn't receive it, as well as there is no money to set up an account.
The record will-
I just don't want the state to come in later. So motion is to deny,
their money.
yeah, based on those rules. All those in favor, all opposed. With that, make a motion to adjourn the finance, so then we can set up the special meeting. All those in favor, all opposed, thank you.